We're going to do our best here, Evans. Obviously, they're blaring music. We are less than an hour away from kickoff, so we have a lot to talk about. Let's first and foremost, Evan, start talking about who is playing, and that, of course, is Cam Newton, who is the first action since he faced the Raiders back in late September. So Cam Newton is active, and he is a go today.
Yep, Cam Newton is active. He was out on the field for early pregame warm-ups, I should say, in a blue hoodie, throwing around, jumping around, doing his normal routine here pregame. So he's ready to go. He's clear to the COVID-19 protocols, clear to the COVID-19 reserve list, and he's out here for the Patriots today. So it's going to be the Cam show once again, and first game is in September 27th. I'm really interested to see if he's rusty at all, if the offense is rusty at all playing with him. Really haven't had any practice here in New England for 2 weeks. So it's going to be interesting to see early on, especially on the offense side of the ball, how much rhythm they truly have.
All right, what kind of game plan? And again, we'll get into the inactives in a minute. Well, you know what? Let's hit the inactives real quick now, because you do have, it's a bit of a mess right now. The COVID situation has really, made things difficult. So because you have Sony Michel is out. That was fine. He was injured anyway. Shaq Mason, Derek Rivers. In addition to, on the inactive list, Brian Hoyer, who appears to have been passed on the depth chart by Jarrett Stidham, and Dalton Keene yet to make his debut. Let's talk about the challenges, again, being short on the offensive line. Again, of course, you have no Mason, you have no Andrews. So this is going to be a bit of a challenge again for the Patriots.
Yeah, the Patriots offensive line is definitely on its second, maybe third. Maybe this is plan C for the Patriots offensive line, especially in the right side of the line. Shaq Mason obviously is out of this game because of COVID-19. So that means that Justin Herron, the rookie, is probably going to be sliding in there alongside Tremaine Illuminor, one of them playing right guard, one of them playing right tackle. I'd assume Michael Onwenu, who's been a stellar rookie for the Patriots for the first 4 games, he'll be on left guard, and Joe Thuney at center. Isaiah Wynn, obviously, taking his normal spot at left tackle. So a little bit of a makeshift offensive line here for the Patriots today. They're going up against a group in Denver and a front that I would say is probably on paper the best front that they've faced all year. Bradley Chubb, Mike Purcell, Shelby Harris. These are guys that aren't necessarily household names outside of Chubb, but they can really play, sort of in that Lawrence guy type of mold in those interior D-line spots. So really interested to see how Herron and Illuminor do today.
And that's what's interesting about this game plan here is, you want to play a ground and pound style, but you may not be fully equipped for it because of some issues both on the line, and the Denver Broncos' strength is on their line. So you may be looking at Cam Newton to air it out without really having had the benefit of a practice, as you said, for weeks. So that's going to be interesting. Let's shift over to staying with the quarterbacks, but it is interesting. We did see a shift, and Jarrett Stidham appears to have moved past Brian Hoyer on the depth chart. He's active. Hoyer's out.
Yeah, Jarrett Stidham, the backup now over Brian Hoyer, and I think it really what earned him that role was the last quarter against Kansas City, where he moved the ball through the touchdown pass to N'Keal Harry. They feel like Jarrett Stidham adds a little bit more to the table, brings a little bit more to the equation, has some more talent to create plays both inside and outside the pocket. So obviously they hope he doesn't play here today. It's hopefully going to be Cam Newton the entire way. But it seems to me like Brian Hoyer's lack of just kind of talent, playmaking ability, whatever you want to call it, is finally subsiding here in New England to Jarrett Stidham being the backup over Hoyer to Cam Newton. But obviously we hope that Cam plays wire to wire unless this thing's a blowout.
Yeah, and again, Hoyer's always been a break glass in case of emergency guy. You jump in there, he knows what he's doing, and he can get you home. He's a spare tire, but he's certainly not a person that you want to have develop, and you really want to see Stidham not just earn the role of backup, but show starter-like capabilities, because you never know what's going to happen in the future, and you want to believe that you drafted somebody who has the chance of being a starter for you or for someone else somewhere down the road. I want to hit on Dalton Keene again. We've been killing the tight ends. We've been killing the rookies. Not killing, but again, we discussed this week the expectations, rookie expectations, and how they've struggled, and Bill Belichick addressed it as well. And again, we've got Dalton Keene, who's practicing, and he can't get on the field at a time when the roster is ravaged both by COVID situations and injuries. Granted, not so many to the positions that Keene himself plays, but he still can't find his way onto the field. What's going on here? At what point are we going to unleash the beast and get to see what this guy can do? Oh, Evan, I think you froze. Are you there, buddy?
I'm right here or not,
Yep.
but it's very, very loud in here. Up to any decibel level you want to at this point. So what they're doing is they're pumping in music in here extremely loud. I'm assuming it's going to be that way the entire game, so you'll probably be able to hear it on the broadcast. But if we're talking about inactives here,
Dalton Keene.
Dalton Keene question. That's the one I thought you were asking. I think the biggest thing is the question mark is that neck injury fully healed. Now he's off the injury report. He's been practicing fully with the team. At least that's what we're being told by the Patriots in their injury report every single week. So what's going on there? I think that we are getting to the point, though, where you got to look back to the draft and see where Bill Belichick said that Dalton Keene was in for a real kind of transition period from that Virginia Tech offense to the New England Patriot offense. It's a completely different book. It's really a different kind of playbook, different style of offense, different alignments for a player like Dalton Keene, where at Virginia Tech, he's probably more primarily as an H-back or an inline tight end. Here in New England, maybe more in the backfield as a traditional fullback. So I think that they're talking a lot about Belichick is how hard of a year it is for the rookies, how much of a transition all these rookies are in for. Dalton Keene from the jump back all the way in April when they drafted him was a player that Bill Belichick highlighted as somebody that's going to be in for a real transition, a real learning curve. So I think that you're seeing, on top of the fact that the rookies are behind in Belichick's mind to begin with, Dalton Keene was already in for a big transition. So doubly behind, I think, here for the New England tight end / fullback. He's wearing a fullback number, so I guess we can call him a fullback. But I would love to see him get out there because I think he can add a little bit more receiving upside, a little bit more athleticism to that fullback position. So it's not just a lead blocker, and they're not as predictable with Jakob Johnson on the field, quite frankly. So I'm looking forward to Dalton Keene's debut. I think he's just too far away based off of this heavy transition for him.
Okay. I know I'm rolling the dice here, Evan, with whether or not you can hear this, but on the Broncos side of the ball, we know that they're going to be without Melvin Gordon, so we're looking at some Phillip Lindsay action there. They're also without their tight end, Noah Fant here, so they're definitely a little bit shorthanded as well, but they do get Drew Lock back. Talk about Denver.
I couldn't hear you again, but here, give it to me one more time.
No Melvin Gordon. No Noah Fant, but Drew Lock is in. You got any of that?
I don't know what you're saying, but I will continue to roll with it. This is what we got. They're just absolutely killing me with Lil Wayne right now, just blaring it right in my ear. But I think the biggest thing for the Patriots here today, I'll make it big picture because I can't hear John, so I don't know exactly what he's talking about. But the biggest thing here for the Patriots that I'm looking for is if off the side of the ball, this is a true strength-on-strength matchup. Patriots running game versus the Broncos run defense. Really interested to see if the Patriots can still move the ball on the ground, especially on interior runs, right at those guys in the middle of this Denver defensive line who are pretty stout players inside. So I'm interested to see if the Patriots can do it. They've done it against a few kind of overwhelmed defensive lines, to be quite honest. The Raiders, Miami, those units are not necessarily known for their run-stopping ability. So I'm really fascinated to see if the Patriots can do the same thing that they've been doing in their wins this season, rushing for over 200 yards against a group that's pretty solid against the run.
Okay, I'm not gonna roll the dice on anything more. We're gonna wrap it up. That's because Evan can't hear us, so we're gonna say goodbye. We'll be back post game where it's gonna be a lot quieter on the field, and Evan Lazar will have updates throughout the game. Follow him on Twitter. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Patriots Press Pass, and obviously find all of Evan's written content on CLNS Media. Bye. Could have probably sealed this thing and walked home with a much easier victory. Patriots had a chance at the end, came up short. It is what it is. Just all in all, just a really crappy performance. But why don't you start in on it? Problems everywhere. Cam Newton versus offensive line. But you get the first bite at the apple here, so go.
Well, Bill Belichick just said it in his press conference behind me that the Patriots didn't do anything well enough today to probably win this game. Maybe the defense did some things well enough to come away with the W, but certainly nothing on the offensive side of the ball. But what I look at right away, and I know that people want to make this about the receivers, and we can certainly talk about the receivers and the lack of production that they're getting out of that group. But the Patriots, as they're currently constituted, assuming that they don't have much at receiver, they need to be able to run the football and protect the quarterback. And today, because of the shuffling along the offensive line, because of all the issues that they had up front with injuries and COVID and all that kind of stuff, they were really struggling to block Denver's front. And when you can't block, as we saw here today, you can't throw the ball, you can't run the football, and you can't therefore can't move it. So they didn't have an opportunity to try to get these receivers in open or kind of in rhythm or any sort of semblance of a passing offense because they had to get rid of the ball so quickly. The other thing that I think I look at, especially in that second half, we started to see inklings of Cam Newton's lack of practice time over the last couple of weeks start to show up with his throwing mechanics. Some of his throwing mechanics on some of the bigger plays of the game reverting back to old Cam Newton, what we used to see with Carolina. The one specifically to Damiere Byrd, who he had him wide open down the left sideline. He was behind the defense. Should have been a touchdown with about 2:30 to go in the game. And Cam stepped out with his front foot to the side. He did the whole arm throwing thing all over again that we broke down at times, multiple times with him in the past, and how the Patriots are trying to fix those types of throwings with his mechanics. So his mechanics sort of reverted back, I think, without the practice time. The Patriots' offensive line was a mess, and their offense was a mess as a result.
Well, Evan, what I will say is this: is certainly, practice time is what it is, and that's something that you can absolutely point to. Again, the flip side of this, you can look at Tennessee last week against Buffalo. Had no practices and who knows how long, and went and whooped a 4-0 football team. So yes, certainly practice is something. I don't know if you can pin it all entirely on that. It was just a bad performance. And as you said, reverting back to, those mechanical issues, the Bird, again, this is always, I remember the last time we did this, we talked about your frustration with the announcers in a game, in a Monday night game. But in this game, again, not really no attention was given to the fact that Bird, that was a walk-in touchdown. And Cam just absolutely missed it. And that was a pivotal moment. And again, he missed a throw. There's pressure. It has to do with the line. He's throwing flat-footed or off his back foot a little bit. But that Harry throw, Harry, that was probably the first time he was open all game on the fourth down there where the game ended. You should be able to make that pass too, I think. And that was another one where it just wasn't even close. I don't know if he's expecting Harry to keep going there. I don't know if that looked like a miscommunication to you. But certainly, yeah, he was getting long with the arm. Nothing really seemed to be working mechanically there. You don't want to talk about it a ton, but you do have to talk about where were the targets there? Did you see anything from your vantage point? Again, you're in the press box there. Are there opportunities he's missing receivers? Again, up until late, and we're talking some Mickey Mouse stuff to get a couple completions going. You had Edelman and Harry well into the fourth quarter with two targets between them. And then there was a couple other ones there. Edelman ended up being targeted 6 times. And then Harry, 2 targets, 1 at the end of the game, 0 catches.
Yeah, honestly, it didn't look like there was a ton of open receivers watching it live. I'm not going to sit here and say that the receivers played well because there were certainly mistakes by the wideouts or just a lack of ability to create separation and get open and explosiveness and playmaking and all that kind of stuff. But I think the biggest thing is what you see with this Denver defense. They like to spin the dial on you quite a bit in the secondary. They're not going to give you 2 looks that are the same too often. They're going to rotate their safeties heavily. And in order to read out a coverage like that, you have to have some time in the pocket to be able to examine the rush and be able to figure out where those safeties are going and what kind of coverage structure it is so that the receivers and the quarterback can read it out together. And I think what we saw here today was that as the game waned on, especially, and you saw it sort of with that Bird throw and then with the last throw to N'Keal Harry, Cam's trust in that protection really declined as the game went along. And there wasn't a whole lot of him looking down the field, a lot of opportunities for him to drop back and just kind of scan the field and sit there and see if there was anybody open because he seemed to get a little bit wary in the pocket, and his pocket awareness wasn't great either. I thought, a lot of people talked about how Cam played poorly against the Raiders. I thought this was probably his worst game of the year so far. I thought this was probably the receiver's worst game of the year so far as well, so it's not all on Cam. Probably the whole offense's worst game of the year. It was just a disaster on that side of the ball. We don't want to make it about practice, but I think what the thing about practice that sort of speaks to this overall point that I'm trying to make. First of all, for Cam's throwing mechanics and his cleanness as a thrower, that is all going to come with practice repetition. And if he doesn't get that repetition daily in order to make that mechanical switch and be able to stick with the new mechanics, with the better throwing mechanics that Jed Fish and the Patriots have worked with him on, it's going to start to decline, and his muscle memory is going to start to go back to what it used to be. The second thing is they had offensive linemen just playing different spots all over the place. They basically had nobody in their week one starting spot. Isaiah Wynn's playing guard, Joe Thuney's playing center. And because of that, this offensive line, this group of five, didn't practice at all for any point in time over the last 2 weeks. So I wouldn't say that practice time was the reason why they lost this game. They definitely had some opportunities, and you can't use that as an excuse. But I think the shuffling on the offensive line got killed by the lack of practice for sure.
Yeah, that was a mess, and that was difficult. But again, if we're not going to blame practice on it, certainly it contributed to what happened. But what happens going forward here? This isn't an offense that you feel great about. To see a performance like this, in this game, regardless of how little time they had to prepare for it, really has to raise some red flags here and a lot of concerns. And again, we don't need to sound all of the panic alarms all at once, but I mean, if you look at the schedule so far, they won the games they were supposed to win. They were competitive in the games that you thought that they might lose, and really had a chance to win both of those. And so you felt okay after 4 games. You can't feel okay about what you saw today.
No, definitely not. Now you're 2 games back and 5 weeks into this, or 5 games into this season of Buffalo in the division, and they don't look like a team. Yes, they got beat badly by the Titans last week on Tuesday, but then that's going away anytime soon. So getting back into this division, 2 games back, 5 weeks into the season, 6 weeks into the season is not easy. It's not going to be an easy thing for the Patriots to do. They might be more, statistically speaking, it's almost, a 90% chance at this point that Buffalo wins the division. And I know that those statistics can sometimes be loosey-goosey, and you can obviously see a lot of comebacks and scenarios where the statistics were wrong, but probability-wise, the Patriots probably are not going to pull the division back unless Buffalo has a catastrophic collapse here down the stretch. So I think that they're in jeopardy now. If they can't get back on the practice field this week to have some sort of normal practice routine, that's going to be killer for this team. They need to get back out on the practice field. They need to get back into their normal routine, and they need to start winning some football games. We need to see some Patriots football where they rattle off 9 out of 10 wins or something like that in order to really keep pace in the AFC. Otherwise, they're going to be vying for one of those extra wild card spots at this point. I don't want to get too doom and gloom, but I do really feel like this team, as currently constituted, has a lot of deficiencies on both sides of the ball that are starting to sort of show out. Even against a team like Denver, you just compare to Denver's skill players to the Patriots' skill players. Denver's running out there with Jerry Jeudy and Tim Patrick, who can play, and Deshaun Hamilton and Phillip Lindsay and Albert O, the rookie tight end, making plays out there. Only 2 catches, but he still made plays in this game. And then you compare that to what the Patriots are working with, and you also look at the Patriots' defense, and they played a lot of this game in nickel, and they really can't get into a base defense because they don't have the linebacker depth. So when teams are running on them, or in a situation where the team has to close out the game, like Denver there at the end, they gave them a gift by throwing the football, obviously, but the Patriots don't have a real run package right now that's effective at stopping the run. So they have some deficiencies in the front 7 on defense, certainly, that we knew about. They had some deficiencies on offense at the skill positions. Again, it all comes back to this for me. If they can't run the football and they can't protect the quarterback offensively, they do not have the firepower on the outside to move the ball. So that's really all it comes down to, is if their offensive line doesn't get healthy and their offensive line doesn't get whole again, then this offense is going to look like it did today.
Yeah, and so there's two things I wanted to hit on there. Is one, that light box base nickel or dime, which basically become the Patriots default, both in terms of necessity and also just some of the teams they're playing. I think it makes sense to do that against, regardless of where your strength is. But that really works when your offense is going to put up points and you're daring a team to run the ball and lose patience with what you're giving them and try to do something that they're not comfortable doing and playing into your trap. But it doesn't work when you can't score at all, because they're just going to grind it and pound it down your throat, which is what they did all game, and it doesn't really matter there. So Denver would have been content to just keep, and in fact, if they kept handing off the ball, there's probably, we're not talking about any late game scenarios where the Patriots had a chance to win it here. But again, for some reason, inexplicably, they decided to throw late. So that's one. The other one, when you talk about, is getting back to playing Patriots football. What is that? That's the thing, is the team has redefined itself a couple of different times. Bully ball seems to be the shoe that fits best, but you can't do that with this offensive line. So certainly that's health-based. You saw the one game against Seattle where Newton was able to air it up, but every other game, I don't see this as a possibility. So I don't really know what the identity of this team is right now, Evan.
You hit on it. It's got to be bully ball, right? That has to be the identity of the team. Right. And I'm not the biggest run game guy. I'm somebody that does believe in some of the analytics telling us to pass the football more nowadays. And the thing that you mentioned about the Patriots defense and not being able to play in a base and having to stop the run at a big nickel or dime or whatever the case may be, I think the biggest thing is that's absolutely fine. And they only gave up 18 points. So at the end of the day, it sort of works, right? It's absolutely fine if you're not getting shredded through the air by the opposing quarterback. So you start giving up 8 yards per attempt to Drew Lock. Yes, they did get the 2 picks. Yes, they kept them out of the end zone. That's all well and good. But that's where you start to run into problems is when you also can't stop the pass. So if you're going to commit all these defensive backs on the field, well, you better be good at stopping the pass, because you're not probably going to be very good at stopping the run. What's the identity of this offense? Well, I think we saw the identity of this is the group together towards the end there. It's going to be smoke and mirrors. It's going to be double passes. It's going to be reverses. It's going to be screens. But if they can get this group back together on the offensive line, that's their identity. That's their core of their roster. That's where they've invested most of their resources, quite frankly, in their roster. Paying Mason, franchise tagging Tooney, drafting Isaiah Wynn in the first round, who did not have a good game today either. You put all those types of things together, that's where their identity is. That's where their strength is offensively. If they can't run the ball and they can't protect the quarterback, this offense stinks. It's that simple. They stink if they can't do those two things.
And even if they can do those things, again, whether they're good enough still remains in question. And again, this whole week, and you're right, Evan, I know this is your least favorite thing to do, but it's all going to be about, I need a receiver.
It's not about that, though. It really isn't.
It isn't now. It isn't today, but it might be tomorrow. That's the thing. Today,
I think the biggest thing is that the reason why I really truly feel like it's not about the receivers is because when you look at sort of the way that this team is built right now, they can win football games consistently by leaning on that offensive line on that side of the ball and keeping teams out of the end zone defensively like they did today. They gave up 18 points on defense. They should win this game 10 times out of 10 if you're only going to give up 18 points on D. Same with only giving up 19 points on offense against Kansas City. Those are 2 games that you should win with a regular, mediocre, average NFL offense.
Yes, you can win. I can walk to the store and then haul my groceries back. It's just harder to do. I'd rather drive, I'd rather be able to do it quickly, get there fast. You need to have, you want to know that there's something in the bag there,
in corners is, let's go out and trade for, Julio Jones, right? Like, we can all sit here and say that, like, yeah, that would be great if the Patriots could offer a first-round pick to Atlanta tomorrow for Julio Jones. Like, obviously all of us would sit here and do that. The issue is that most likely the guys that they're going to be able to acquire on the trade market are going to be the Mohamed Sanus of the world, not the Julio Joneses of the world. And that's why they're available.
What's wrong with that?
Right? What's wrong with that is that guy couldn't play for them either. So I think the biggest thing is that this team is built. What we saw in Seattle was start with bully ball. Seattle really committed to stopping bully ball and then vertical passing off of the bully ball action, right? That's the biggest thing about this team, I really think, is that they can be sort of a vertical downfield passing game if they have that base, that foundation of a running game. And today they just couldn't block anybody. And no matter what level of football you play at, we're going to talk about the tight ends. We're going to talk about the wide receivers. If you can't block anybody offensively, then you're not going to move the football, regardless of, you could have Randy Moss out there. And if you block like you did today, you're going to have trouble moving the ball.
No, there's no doubt about it. It starts with that. The question just is, when you do that, when you fix that, is the other thing there or not there? And I think people will question whether the other thing is there. So even when you fix it and you have bully ball at your disposal and you can block for Newton and you can play the way that this team has to play because of their lack of weapons, yes, they can win. But again, as you said, it's against the direction the league is going. It doesn't match the analytics. It's not the way you want to play. It's the way you have to play. So if everything is perfect, then they have to play this way because they have no choice, because they really don't have much of an option, I don't think, anywhere else. So the question
that's such a great spin way of looking at it, right? They have to run for 200 yards a game because they can't move the ball any way else. I mean, if they're running for that kind of efficiency and with those kind of production, I mean, who cares how if they run it or throw it at that point?
If you're doing that, right? Yeah.
Which they have in their 2 wins against Miami and the Raiders. They ran for over 200 yards and they controlled the game on offense at the line of scrimmage, and it opens up everything else. I think the frustration really stems from that people watch these games and they see the ball, Cam kind of standing there in the pocket with no place to go with the football, and he's kind of just patting the ball, and you're like, well, what's he doing? And obviously those instances is when there's nobody open. But I think a big part of the reason why they get into those situations today was because on first downs, especially, they couldn't run the football. So they're behind the chains every single time. You run it for 2 yards on first down and you're in 2nd and 8, and you're in 3rd and 6. And now all of a sudden you're in all passing situations where they do need to spread you out and they do need to get something out of Cam Newton.
Again.
It's just not the way that they can. That's not the way that this Patriots team can play and consistently win games.
Correct. But again, it's not fans wanting this to happen. The team, dating back to last year, recognizing 100% that they lacked weapons, went out, drafted Harry, traded for Sanu, tried to bring in Antonio Brown.
It's crazy how hard they
everywhere. And so recognizing that they were in dire need and going all out for pass catchers last year, struck out completely. And here's where they are now with it. So the team itself recognizes this is an issue. And now we've yet to see the Harry year 2 development. And again, there's reasons why, and it doesn't mean it's all over and all of that, and it's fine. But, we're already in he is what he is land when we were talking about who this guy is and talking about a guy who you're going to have to live with his limitations, which is not what you spent a first-round pick on, but we know this. But Edelman, again, you just don't know. I mean, you don't know what's left there at all. So I'm really just looking around wondering, it's easy to blame the receivers. It's just, are these guys so far below level that you can't count on them for anything? That's the thing. I don't know. I really don't know.
I think what's amazing about what you just said is how much they have really tried to bring in skill positions and players. And I don't know, it's a longer sort of form answer to get into. Is it talent evaluation? Is it just bad luck? What's the issue here with them evaluating receiver talent? But they've drafted 2 tight ends in the 3rd round. They've drafted a receiver in the 1st round. They've traded a 2nd round pick for Mohamed Sanu. They've brought in reclamation projects like Antonio Brown and Josh Gordon, and none of them have worked to this point. None of them. So that tells me it's a catastrophic failure. It's not just talent evaluation. It's not just coaching. It's all of it, right? They're not getting the coaching they need to get these guys prepared and ready to play. They're not getting the talent evaluation to hit on some of these picks a little bit better. Look at the Broncos. I mean, they obviously didn't have a high enough pick to draft Jerry Jeudy, but Jerry Jeudy is already making plays for them as a rookie. Albert O has 2 big catches in this game where Devin Asiasi can't even get targeted in the passing game. Albert O's, this is his first game that he's dressed all year, and he's already making plays for Denver instantly.
Another donut for Asiasi again.
Another one, and I don't think I've seen Asiasi run a vertical route in 3 weeks. He doesn't run upfield. They have him leak out into the flats. They have him chip and release. They have him be a check down option for Cam. He does not run vertically up the field at all. And because Edelman was not on his game today or really wasn't getting anything going, the Broncos were playing with the middle of the field wide open a lot of the time, and I just kept on begging them to send Asiasi up
the seam.
Up the chute, please get up the field, somebody, right? And it just wasn't there, except the Demir Bird throw that Cam missed, of course. But that's the biggest thing I think I look at this is that the Broncos really clearly said, Fangio said, first of all, we know you can't pass protect. So we're just going to be aggressive, and we're going to pin our ears back. We're going to bring some blitzes. They blitzed obviously on the last play on the incompletion to N'Keal Harry. We're going to mix it up a little bit and confuse this offensive line that clearly has not practiced together at all. Right. And the second thing is that we're not afraid of any of these receivers over the top. So they're driving on everything in the flats. They're keying on screens. They're getting in the faces of these receivers off the line. This was a disrespectful game by the Broncos in the sense that they just did not fear any one of these Patriots wide receivers one bit or tight ends, and they were not worried about any of those guys making consistent
and
plays.
Why should you be? Why should you be? You know, it's again, you're just there's nobody there who you think can win a one-on-one matchup, and so there's really no concern. You can really match up with any of them, with almost anybody that you have. There's no Patriots aren't looking at the field and saying this is our matchup. They're lucky if they can get anybody open right now. And as you said, Asiasi 0 targets again, Keen again inactive. And this is where again the frustration is going to bubble here, fair or not fair, which is I mean, as you said, you don't know what it is. It could be talent evaluation. Do you even want to continue do you even want to spend any more currency going out and getting somebody? You want to kick another second-round pick for a Mohamed Sanu type who just got released again, by the way. If you guys want him, he's there. He's available. You know, you want another washout? I really don't know. I mean, I don't think there's an easy answer, but there's going to be a lot of anger this week over this because,
Certainly. And I think to me, the anger is definitely warranted. But secondly, to me, I don't think this is just about talent evaluation. I think a lot of people want to make it about talent evaluation and say, oh, Belichick can't draft. How did he see N'Keal Harry was a better wide receiver pick than DK Metcalf or than AJ Brown? And maybe that was a slight miss on talent evaluation. I'm more concerned about what is happening with these receivers when they get in the building. You know, what are they getting coached? Where is the, kind of the improvements? Where's sort of the coaching happening here? And this is sort of something that I think is being underreported, under-talked about, is that for 2 years in a row now, they've had basically rookie wide receiver coaches coaching a group of a lot of young players, a lot of important young players. N'Keal Harry, you spend a first-round pick on him, and then you have Joe Judge and Mick Lombardi coaching him his first 2 years in the league. Those are not exactly, these stud wide receiver coaches that have been around for 20 years. So that's the biggest thing I am wondering too, is it not just talent evaluation? Is it also once we get them in the building that we're not doing a good enough job of coaching them up once they're here? And that to me is why this is such a systematic failure, is that you can live with, okay, N'Keal Harry might not have been the right pick, but if you can get 800 yards out of him in his second season, you say, okay, whatever, at least that's better than nothing. Right now, they're trending towards closer to 600, maybe 550 in his second year. And I really do wonder if this is a coaching problem and a talent evaluation problem with receivers, because now it's just becoming so widespread with this team that it can't possibly just be talent evaluation. It's got to be the whole card,
it's endemic,
the whole deck. Yeah.
Right. And where's preseason darling Gunner? I mean, it's,
That's a great question.
I don't know. And that's, I don't know. You almost, I don't know if it again comes back to just, it's in order to get in there, you have to know everything, and it's got to be safe, and they won't put anybody out there who doesn't understand every single wrinkle in the playbook. And so, you got to, it's like a Boy Scouts. You got to earn X amount of pins or badges before you move on to the next thing. And some of them just can't get out there yet for whatever reason. They haven't earned their stripes. I don't know, but anything, you'd want to see anything different. That's why, like, Damian Harris 2 games ago was such a revelation. It was like, all right, at least it's somebody different. It's fresh legs. It looks good. But I don't know. It's again.
I think the biggest thing is to me, and listen, it's never this simple in football, but what you look at what they ask these receivers to do in other systems. For instance, I don't want to keep on harping on the DK Metcalf versus N'Keal Harry
but Metcalf has asked to do very little.
Right.
I think he wouldn't be playing here either.
So obviously he's in a fantastic situation in Seattle with one of the best deep ball throwers in the last 3 decades in the NFL, and Russell Wilson. But they basically asked him, especially his rookie year, he was running slant, he was running go, and he was running wide receiver screens. He had like 3 or 4 routes in his entire tree. 80% of his production came on 3 different routes as a rookie. They're not asking him to run option routes. They're not asking him to read out leverage and make decisions off that. They're not asking him to do all these complicated things. They're telling him, hey, give good effort in the run game, block. Right? Just block your butt off. But we're not going to sit here and spend half of practice worrying about how you can crack block or not. Right? And that's the difference, I think, is what we're seeing is that the complexity of what they're asking these guys to do, it's clearly, to me, it's clearly in N'Keal Harry and Devin Asiasi's heads that they got to think through a million different things before they even get to the point of making the catch. You know what I mean? Everybody's talking about how N'Keal Harry isn't as good as he was after the catch as a rookie now, and I think a lot of it's because he's overthinking it. And you talk to players that have played in the system that have both success and failure. The one thing that they say is that instantly when you get into the system at first, you do a lot of thinking. And when you're thinking that much, you can't play fast. You can't play 100% speed because you're so busy worrying about what you're supposed to be, where you're supposed to be, what you're supposed to be doing. And right now, I think that we're seeing a lot of that with those two guys is that they're in their own heads, whereas N'Keal's just so worried about running the proper route that he's not even worried necessarily about making plays. And I think the reason why he did make plays against Seattle is because they played so much zone coverage that he wasn't worried about reading out leverages. He wasn't worried about, how am I going to defeat this press man corner? He was just going out there, finding pockets of space and making himself available to the quarterback. If they can get teams to play zone against them, they can be effective.
Why would you?
Game. But if you play straight up man-to-man against this team, as has been the case for basically 3 or 4 years running now, they have a tough time moving the football.
Yeah. All right. Well, there's going to be a ton to dissect. I think this game you can put a pin in it and pretty much say that, look.
This is a bury the game tape game.
It's a bury it. There's nothing to be learned here.
We didn't practice for 2 weeks. Our offensive line was a bunch of guys from Foxborough.
It was over before the game.
Right. So I think you get everybody healthy. You make sure that COVID gets, through the locker room and out of the locker room, and you get through that part of it too. And you come back against San Francisco and hope that you have a much better. This was one of the worst Bill Belichick performances I've seen through 3.5 quarters in a long time.
Brutally bad. Brutally bad. And again, you're looking at, if you swing it back to, again, not KC, again, you can throw that one out. You're playing without Hoyer, but you go back to that Raiders game too. We're talking that first half was another one. You just absolutely burned that tape too. So you're looking at 6 out of the last 8 quarters at Gillette Stadium. There's just been not great football on either.
Not great.
No, and lucky that they were able to hold teams to field goals and stay in the game. And obviously they had a good second half there against the Raiders. But yeah, there's not a lot to be learned. So again, you give them the week, you have a full week of practice. You hope you take on another team that's kind of reeling right now, and see what happens as far as that's concerned. But get ready for Julio Jones, Zach.
It's not happening, guys. I wish it was.
Golden Tate, I don't know.
Zach Ertz is a great one because Zach Ertz, not to go on a whole rant, I know we're trying to sign off, but Zach Ertz has been available since August. You could go out and trade for Zach Ertz. The whole league knows Zach Ertz is available, right? And they still haven't done it now. If we wake up tomorrow morning and the Patriots trade for Zach Ertz, that's a total panic move by Bill Belichick, right? No. That's a total crap. We're screwed. We need to go out there and get somebody.
Ertz has been available. Njoku has been available. Right. You could have had these guys if you wanted these guys, but what you didn't have back then is the benefit of 5 years worth of tape on your own guys. And
I would just love it if they would just send Devin Asiasi up the field one time and just see what he can do.
Just see, because I could go back and watch all of his routes. Not that many of them. I watched his first, I think 13 in the first 4 games that he ran. Flat, check down, chip and release. 0 vertical routes the entire time. It's just it's mind-blowing to me that they aren't trying to get a little bit more out of him. You ready for the other conversation you're not going to want to have this week?
Oh yeah, what is it?
How solid is Cam Newton?
Is solid in what way?
In his role as starting quarterback.
Oh, well, he's going to be the starter, but today was definitely the second half, especially. I thought he played decent in the first half, actually, given what he was working with. The second half was not good, and I think it's what I started with. The regression of his mechanics, especially on that throw to Damiere Byrd, was pretty obvious. And when you see him starting to, throw with square feet to his shoulders, and it's all just kind of like, all arm, right? And when you get into that mix with Cam Newton, that's literally why the ball fell short. It's a javelin, and while he had Damiere Byrd behind the defense, and he short-armed it because of his mechanics, and he's going to – Jedfish, I know, is going to correct it, but they need him back out on the practice field to correct it with reps. It's a muscle memory thing. You have to be able to just do it. You can't be worried about it,
Yeah, but again, the first will be there if you have another Newton stinker. Stidham was just elevated to second string, okay? So –
This is a John topic. I'd much rather talk about the receiver stinking than Cam Newton losing his starting job.
I know. They would never bench. Bill Belichick would never bench an incumbent quarterback.
Right.
Also, speaking of, that's 2001. This is the first time anybody wants to panic button even harder. First time since 2002, a Patriots team is 5 games into the season under 500. It always felt like that week 4 was that breaking. They've had a few week 4 breaking points where they were 2-2, and it was like, sky is falling. And a couple of those seasons ended with Super Bowl victories. They are now 2-3. It's the first time they've been under 500 after week 5 or later since 2002. So not familiar territory. Whether or not this Patriots football that we spoke about is a thing that can return, it's hard to say. They got to get healthy. They may need some help at the deadline, or they may need to send Devin Asiasi up the seam every once in a while. There are solutions we think out there.
The Broncos did with Alberto. He just the first play of his career, he's already up the seam on Kyle Duggar. I'm just like, why can't you just try that? Like, what's the harm in trying it? Instead, you're having Ryan Izzo do it, and he's just fumbling the ball after he catches it, actually makes a good play, and then he just fumbles it for absolutely no reason. It's just mind blowing to me that so routinely they have a disconnect between talent evaluation, actual coaching and fundamentals, and execution, and actually using those players to the best of their abilities. Asiasi at UCLA was a seam demon. That was the reason why they drafted him, was because he's got some burst and some ability to get up the field, and we just haven't seen it. So again, it's talent evaluation in the draft, coaching once we get here, and then actually making sure that they're implementing those players correctly. And I think that they've missed the boat on N'Keal Harry in that sense, and I think they've missed the boat on Devin Asiasi in that sense as well.
Yeah, and again, I guess to try to make people feel a little bit better, if you looked at first 4 weeks might have been looked at as a preseason, so this might be week 1. And again, we don't know what this team's going to look like, and we've seen many Patriots teams that look nothing like they look in the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season when they got to week 10, 11, 12, 13. So you're hoping there's a vision and a plan that they're going to get to eventually and incorporate more of everything into the mix. But again, there's a lot of unknowns. So we'll wrap this one up now. Evan's got a ton more to do. And Patriots are talking right now, so Evan's going to jump in on that. We'll have more stuff for you on our YouTube channel later on. And of course, make sure you follow CLNS Media for 10 things we learned and immediately want to forget about this game, which Evan Lazar will be posting a little bit.
I'm going to write 3,000 words on a game that none of us want to read about. So.
Exactly. It'll be like an Inspector Gadget sort of thing. Yeah. It'll just blow up once you're done reading it.
Yeah.
But that's it. We'll wrap it up. Thanks for joining us.